Humans learn a lot from failure. In fact, we tend to learn more from our failures than we do from our successes. The problem is that when we're young, we're taught that failure is a bad thing. So just think about school for a minute. When children go to school, if they do well in a test, they're given an A. A is the first letter in the alphabet, top score. But if that child does poorly on the test, well, they're given an F, a failing grade. And just think about the ways that we talk to these two different types of students. To the A student, we will often say to them, you know what? You're going to do great things when you get older. But to the failing student, we say, well, you'll figure out something to do with your life. Now, why do we do this? Why do we talk to these two different students in this way? Because if you ask me, it's harder for the person who fails to come back and to try again compared to the person who does well. Because the student who fails has two choices. One, they can sit there and they can say to themselves, well, I'm just stupid and I don't know how to do this. Or they have to reassess. And they have to ask themselves, what did I do wrong? How can I do better next time? And what's fascinating to me is that the people who fail and come back, well, they end up coming to success from a very different vantage point than those who haven't struggled before. Now, one of my favorite examples of this actually comes from the world of artificial intelligence. About a decade before the term ChatGPT was part of our vernacular, Google was trying to create a computer that could play the ancient Chinese game Go. Now, when they programmed it originally, they wanted it to figure out all the various permutations of the board and then figure out which were the best possible moves. The problem was the computer kept getting slaughtered because there were just so many possibilities. Now, this board that you're seeing right here, this board is a 9x9. This is a beginner's board. But the real boards are much larger and they have many, many more moves associated with them. And so they realized that they had to completely rethink the way they were going to do it. And they decided that they were going to teach the computer how to learn. So essentially what they did was they taught it the rules of the game, nothing else. And then they just let it play hundreds of thousands of games against itself. And in doing so, it learned from its mistakes. And so about 5 months later, they had it take on a human opponent. And it did very, very well. And today, these AI computers, they're so good at this game that it's rare for a human to win. So how did it become so successful? Well, it made mistakes. Lots and lots of mistakes. It learned from that failure and developed strategies that more successful players had never thought of before. I think this illustrates something really important for us, which is that we should embrace failure rather than running away from it. Thomas Edison, who is credited as one of the greatest inventors of all time, once said, "Many of life's failures are people who didn't realize how close they were to success when they gave up." If you spend time reading about Edison's work, what you will find is that many of his failures became seeds that gave him other ideas for different inventions. And so I think one could argue that it was his willingness to fail that made him so successful. So what this tells us is that progress is really the accumulation of failure until that failure produces something original. And unfortunately, I feel like originality is being squeezed out of our society because we're so afraid to fail. So the question that we need to answer next is, how can we gain the perseverance to not give up when we encounter failure? Will you join me upstairs?